Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Connor. I work with the Early Learning Division. I want to welcome you to our second, our mid-month, the Ides of August, whatever you want to call it, ELD OPK Director webinar. Great to see a lot of faces on camera. Thank you. It helps us to see what we're doing and like that. Other folks from ELD, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Sure. Why don't we go alphabetical? So I'll start. How's that? And then I think it'll be Lindsay and then Teresa. No, we got Kelly. So we might have to figure this out a little bit. I'm not sure who it falls on, but good morning, Gwen Baxel, Early Learning Programs Director. Nice to see most of you and to see your names of others who aren't on screen. I also want to send Andy Bellsmont our regrets for not being able to be here today. She is attending an inclusion, a multi-agency and community partnership inclusion meeting that ODE is facilitating this morning. So she's doing some good work there for us. Kelly, do you want to go next and then Lindsay?
Good morning. My name is Kelly Taylor and I am the Administrative Specialist for the Program Unit. So I support all the programs that we have here in the Early Learning Division.
Hi everyone, Lindsay Pearson here, Preschool Program Specialist. So lovely to see you all. I'm noticing everybody's hair is getting really long. That's what I'm noticing from last week. Maybe not Robert and Dennis and Brett, but everybody else. Pam, Maureen, ICU, Julie. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
Brett's first webinar, and he's already under the gun a little bit.
Teresa, are you next?
I think so. Hi, I'm Teresa Witt. I'm the grant manager for the OPK grants and many others here at the Early Learning Division. And I'm here because I get to help talk about some of the fiscal and other sides, fiscal, not physical, fiscal and other sides of the other pieces of your grants.
Great. Great. Well, let's go ahead. We've got some slides to share, some information, and some questions for you all. And I'll just do the thing of the thing here. We got the date right. It's off to a good start. Our proposed agenda for today. We're doing the welcome and the review right now. Gwen's going to give us an update on sort of where we're at with the Early Learning Council's decisions and grant agreements and so forth. Teresa's going to talk with us about year-end expenditure reports. I've got an overview of the health and safety guidelines, which came out on the 14th and take effect on the 1st, and some other resources to share. Lindsay's got some update on startup classrooms and some extra food. There's one item that I know there's going to be a tug of war about. I'm just saying that right now. And then we'll have some conversation and questions. We'll have questions along the way, of course, but that's our agenda for today. Any quick thoughts on the agenda before we jump in? We'll be monitoring the chat box. Oh, there's a chat. Yeah, thanks, Teresa. If you're not speaking, mute yourself. We might be, in a loving way, mute you if we see that you're making noise and you didn't mean to, but you can always unmute yourself. So thank you. All right, well, Gwen, you just let me know when you want to switch slides or be the presenter or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Michael. Hello again to everyone. And I think some of this might be repetition. I know that OHSA had a meeting last week that we participated in, but I wasn't sure. It was hard for me to determine who was all there at that meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that this also came to you from the Early Learning Division as part of the webinar packet today, and so that this will be sent out to you and you have this. So just a quick update. I think most of you are aware from special session that for our programs, we are fully funded, at least for these that are listed here. So this means we were able to receive our fully funded in our SSA allocation and also in our general funds. So our OPK prenatal programming, Preschool Promise, Equity Fund, and Relief Nurseries are all fully funded for both our current service levels and any expansion that was in SSA. So I told you know that was really good news. So Michael, next slide. News. I think some of this I wanted to dig into a little bit more on the next slide. So where we saw reductions though in the Student Success Act or Early Investment Account funds was a 50% reduction in the professional learning allocation, which was at $12.5 million. The Early Learning Division had submitted a plan to the legislature regarding like how we intended to spend that $12.5 million, and that had been accepted. And then we went into COVID-19 and these reductions. So these reductions, I just want to make it clear that even though we had a reduction of 50%, this is still the largest state investment that Oregon has had in professional learning. So I think we can still be pleased with that, although it's not, we're not able to do all of the work that we had intended to do. And the Early Learning Division is needing to resubmit their plan based on these reductions. So that's in process right now. The reduction actually, just so people understand, it was a decision to have some of the funds from that $12.5 million actually support other work. Sorry, lawnmower starting up outside. And so some of the projects that that's where the reduction of funds went was, and we're very pleased, it was just different use. I mentioned last time that there were 3 early learning facilities that are being built, and one is in the Port of Morrow. So, but that's where the funds were kind of reallocated to, were some, and there's another, the one in Southern Oregon, there's some funds for an early learning center down there. So it was still in for early learning, but just in a different capacity and a different way of supporting early learning. So that's where the reduction or the money was reallocated to. And in general funds, we saw a reduction to Healthy Families Oregon. It was reduced by $1 million, yet in SSA they're receiving $2 million. So it's sort of a reduction in one funding source, but an increase in another. So right now the Early Learning Division is working on trying to kind of work through that. It's a little bit confusing, where are the cuts and where's the expansion? So that's being worked on currently. And then the Early Learning Hubs had a reduction in the general funds by $1.3 million, yet they're receiving additional funds through SSA to support the expansion of publicly funded programs, coordinated enrollment, and the sector plans, to be more specific. So again, sort of a decrease in one bucket and an increase in the other. And then in general funds, the Focused Childcare Networks, the $915,000 that is allocated typically for Focused Childcare Networks, it's been suspended this year. So it's not that it was like eliminated as a line item in our general funds budget. It's just that those funds are suspended, meaning there aren't funds available, but we're hoping that next program year we'll be able to go back to current service levels, or who knows, maybe more. But so those are where we saw the reductions. And I don't see any questions on that. So that I think you've been hearing this in a couple different venues. So just wanted to make sure. Okay, Michael, next slide then. Excuse me. And so in regard to your grant awards, when we last met, we had talked about sort of like what the timeline looked like and what we needed to have happen. So special session occurred. We got through that. So I should have put that on there. That's completed and done. We now know what our funds are. And then we had last week the ELC, the Early Learning Council, address the appeal. So that's complete. And now what the ELD is working on is finalizing your grant agreement. And then the grant agreements will be sent to all of you. The grants and ops teams has asked to say, we're still on our in August timeline. As you know, we're trying to get this out as quickly as possible. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that you will be seeing some movement next week, or at least something coming your way. But there's a lot of work to do as we get all those grants entered into DocuSign. And that's what I wanted to let you know, is that due to COVID, usually you would be sending things back either electronically or, through the mail. So we had those copies, I think it was usually electronically, but we're using DocuSign this year, so that might be new for some of you. This is now that the ELD is able to do like our own grants and not go through ODE procurement. This is a system that we're using to help expedite executing grants. So just wanted to make you aware that that's the system. I think probably some of you have used it before for other purposes as well. So that's kind of the quick overview, but I did want to talk about the appeals and how that kind of worked out. So there's a distinction. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion around like the Early Learning Council's role and like Miriam's kind of authority as the systems director in making determinations around funding. So the council's role was just to, excuse me, to address the appeals. So, and they did that last week. So we had 2 OPK appeals. And so one was for an increase in funding for prenatal to 3 programming with Cat Columbia, and the other was OCDC in regard to some prenatal to 3 and also some preschool age slots. And so the council addressed just those requests, like whatever the requests were in those appeals, that's what the council was addressing. But any other funding decisions outside of those appeals in regard to now our new level of funding, back to our kind of our status quo where we were hoping to be, those decisions are made in-house at the ELD, and Miriam has kind of the decision on that. So I just want to let you know that there has been some confusing that the council kind of makes all the funding decisions, but their role was to address the appeals. In regard to us bringing in additional tier 2 or tier 3 funding, that's what we're kind of working on. Those are what's in progress, making sure that we have enough in the startup, and that we are making sure that anyone that had slots in tier 2 or 3, that there's a readiness factor there that we're all comfortable with. And that could be because of potentially the facilities and or service area agreements that might not have been in place at the time of application. And so we just wanted to let you know that that's, some of those final decisions as we're looking at finalizing the grant awards. So I think that's, I don't see anything in the chat box on that. So that's where we're at with our appeals, grants, awards. It's nice to be able to come back and know that we've checked some things off, that we're not in a standstill, things are moving forward. I know not as quickly as all of you need them to be, but they are moving forward. So Michael, this is where, if I could just share my screen for a second, that'd be great. Not that, let me get to the right one here. Okay, got it. Thanks, thank you. So I shared this, some of these slides at the Early Learning Council meeting, but I tried to see who was on, and I'm not sure how many of you were for that meeting. And then also been trying to share these slides, but these are just for OPK, and I just really wanted to extend appreciation and gratitude to all of you for all the work you did on submitting quality applications, and that we're able to report back to you some of the data around services from those applications. So as you know, part of our goal with the expansion was to increase our prenatal to age 3 slots statewide. And we do, now that we are fully funded, we have over 1,100 prenatal slots. We wanted to increase salaries for lead teachers and teacher assistants, increase transportation, and then also move a high percentage of our children, preschool age children, from part-day services into full-day services. So let me see, I need to hide something there. Okay, so you can see this huge jump around prenatal to 3. We were all anticipating this, but we went from 64 slots to over 1,100. And then the pie graph on the right, that is indicating which service models we have in the mix. So 49% of the 1,100 slots are in center-based services. And now we know that might look a little different due to COVID, but thank you. That's amazing. That was a priority. We know families really need the services. And so almost 50%, so 49% in center-based, 41% in the home visiting model. And I know we call that home-based and OPK. It was a little bit confusing with the council around what's the difference between home-based preschool promise with home-based providers as opposed to a home visiting model for early Head Start. So here it says home visiting. And then we had 8% of the slots are in a locally designed option, and we were able to maintain some of the family child care partnerships that some of you had already had in place. So that's the breakdown by service model. Let's see if I can, my computer's frozen. Let's see what's going on. I'm not sure. Sorry, it's not allowing me to skip forward. Whoop, no, it wants to go really fast. And then this is, again, gratitude to all of you. We, in programming 1920, we had just 5% of our OPK preschool age slots in duration for a total of 343 children. And then as we came out of this granting cycle, we have moved to 35% with over 2,700 children receiving duration. So what an amazing conversion. We were hoping to get to 30%, and this was really a real win for children and families. So thank you. I know facilities are really tough. It's hard to do this, but you figured it out. So thank you. And then let's see the next slide, if I can get there. Again, I don't know why it's delayed. Probably gonna, oh, there it is. And then in regard to salary increases for teacher assistants and lead teachers, 14 applicants were able to meet sort of all of the requirements and at least hitting the minimum requirements. And then there were 9 that for most of the program, most of your steps or within your wage structure that you were able to hit some of the targets. And then some, that means 50% or less of so 4 of you weren't able to hit the targets. It was at 50% or less of your salary structure aligning with either the educational or the Oro registry minimum salary targets. And then there was 1 grantee who was not able to hit any of them. So for just kind of a heads up, I'm sure that Lindsay and Michael have been in touch, but for those of you who are in the most, some are none, there's going to be some additional conversations this year and technical assistance, and we really want to dig in a little bit with you and understand and see and do some problem solving and see you know, what supports are needed and maybe how can we move these more of you to the all, and it might not be this year, but that we really want to look into this so that we can report back to the legislators on our successes and also some of the challenges. So with that, that's sort of my update for our awards and the grants. So it looks like there's some things in the chat box. And Michael, you can grab the slide deck back. I'm done. Do I need to give that back? I will turn off my, there you go. Okay. Yes, Teresa, let's see. I think the slide deck with the data, yes. So those I'll make sure that Michael and Lindsay have that and they can send that out to all of you. And I think Lindsay, Sean, I think Lindsay will be addressing the startups a little bit. And then I think that was it. Was there any? Okay. Oh, Marguerite, what's the timeline for tier 2 and 3 and startup money decisions? Marguerite, that'll all get wrapped up into the grant agreements that we're finalizing. So we're hoping to have all of that cleaned up so that you would know by the end of the week in preparation for grant agreements going out. Thanks. All right. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you. I think that was my spiel this morning.
Great. Thank you, Gwen. So next, Teresa, take it away.
Well, mine's super quick. Year-end expenditure reports. On the OPK budget docs that were submitted at the beginning of the 2019-2020 program year, there is a tab for your final expenditure report for this first year. Because we are not rolling it into a continuation grant, we are going to use a different budget document for the 2021 so that we can incorporate SSA funding into the budgets. So while you can go ahead and utilize this for any planning you want to do, all we need from this document going forward is that year one expenditures report. And if you have questions about it, if you need me to send back what we have for your budget so that you can work on it. I know with staffing changes, sometimes you can't always find a document, let me know and I'll get that back out to you. And we would normally want those by August 31st, but we're going to extend to mid-September for the moment. Let me know if you need more time to do those expenditures. That's all I have at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Appreciate it. Well, let's move on then. I do want to remind folks that the due health and safety guidelines came out on the 14th and they start up on the 1st. I have some slides and there's a lot of information on them, and feel free to use them. And I'm not intending to read all the words, so I'm inoculating you against what you're about to see. My intention is just to sort of remind you a little bit about kind of the structure of the guidelines and what's in them, and then and let you know that there are more resources coming from the Office of Child Care. So it talks about drop off and pickup, and there's lots of stuff around how the parent has to be there, and you have to maintain the sanitary conditions as the children are being picked up and dropped off. There's a daily health requirement, health check requirement. We're familiar with that in Head Start, but there's additional stuff around, what are we going to do, and what does the staff need to be wearing, and so forth. So these are a couple of the items. There's some guidance around family engagement. I think if the more remote we're doing, from 6 feet to all the way to fully remote, the more challenging it is to do family engagement. So there's some guidance there around that, and some additional details on what we mean by group size and stable group size, including that maximum group size of 250 in a building at the same time, 0 to 5-year-olds. There's some kind of a detailed list of what to do if there's a confirmed case. And it says, contact your licensor. If you're using our ERDC, there's a telephone number and email for that. And also to contact the local health authority, and then also your program specialist. So that would be, there's no wrong door for me and Lindsay, but yeah. There's details on the protective gear that folks need to wear in certain circumstances, and what the face mask stuff, who that applies to and when. If you're under 2, you're off the hook. Otherwise, we're encouraging kids to wear face masks and like that. There's details on hand washing and food and nutrition. There's some details around cleaning expectations and having a schedule. And there's what to do if you have a confirmed case. And with our equity lens, we want to be really careful about exclusions. So we know that as a field, we're working on having a more equitable response to challenges. And this is another case where we really want to be thoughtful and careful about exclusions, but public health comes first, and so like that. And the transportation plan is pretty detailed. We have a template coming out for how to develop a transportation plan, because there are a large number of considerations that need to happen with transporting kids. This is an illustration, not a requirement that children are actually driving the vehicles. And then the safety plan, you have to have a plan that you develop with your parents and others, and you got to keep it current. And then the last part, I'll remind you, friendly reminder that everybody needs to be registered as emergency childcare, and everybody needs to follow the health and safety guidelines if you're getting funds from us. The effective date is the 1st, and as I mentioned at the beginning, additional resources are on the way. So there's checklists, there's templates. I happen to sit on that work group, so the guidance came out Friday, and we're trying to get resources out to you soon. We didn't want to have the resources land at the same time as the guidance, and it's overwhelming, but we do have some, I think, pretty cool stuff. There's also going to be some videos that we're putting out in different languages, which is kind of neat. So to meet the requirement that staff have an orientation to the health and safety guidelines, we have some materials that'll be helpful for that, slides and pre-recorded videos that kind of walk people through different components of the guidelines. Just want to pause. There's one question in the box. Yeah, Marguerite's asking about the webinar materials. Would you, if you wouldn't mind, Marguerite, just send me an email and I'll pop through the slogan, the path there about how to get to that. Make sure that it's all up to date. Thank you. Other resources to talk about. As part of our ongoing support for implementation of extended duration, we have another workshop coming up on this 22nd of September. And so look for an email about that. Notice the target there is instructional leaders and coaches. So I know all of you do everything, and we'd really like to get folks who are responsible for children's outcomes and putting together your coaching systems. That's who we tend to think of as instructional leaders, and coaches themselves. One of the things, we did the pilot with extended duration, and I think for the first time that anybody's really looked at what goes on in classrooms in the afternoon compared to the morning when folks are doing extended duration. Oddly, there really wasn't much of a research base on that. And so we found some good stuff, and then we also found some maybe not so good stuff. So that's usually the way it goes. We found that class scores went down in the afternoon. We found that, on the other hand, we found that programs that had longer work times and fewer transitions had better kiddo outcomes. So we want to help your instructional leaders and coaches think about, how do you set up an afternoon session that's not, super chopped up with transitions, and how do you actually provide more time for play and studies and projects and all the good stuff that kids really need. Some of you won't be doing any extended duration in person, and I understand that. So you can either swing around to that at another time, or send some folks to bank that information. And then if they live on a street, they could call it Bank Street. There's a little early ed humor for you there. Let's keep going. Our colleagues from TS Gold will join us on the 2nd of September for our webinar, regularly scheduled monthly webinar. They have been developing a number of resources, online tools. As you know, using TS Gold is a required component of OPK. And so we want to help you think about that and how to be effective in implementing that tool. Our main emphasis is on observation, individualization, assessment of kids' learning and growth. That's the important thing to think about. And TS Gold is the tool that everyone uses to do that. So those webinars that I've highlighted there are upcoming, and they're on the TS Gold Sometimes people ask us, they say, can we use other tools for assessing kids? And absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. So I think that's the end of my, mercifully perhaps, that's the end of my section here. Oh no, one more. Speaking of authentic assessment, there is a webinar coming up. This is a part of the early childhood investigations webinars with these folks. One of Holly Delgado is from HighScope, and they're thinking a lot about, well, what does it mean to observe and assess kids' growth and development during a public health emergency when you're not always meeting kids face to face? I think that's a hard question for our field, but we're up for the challenge of what does it really mean to assess kids and individualize instruction when we're not always in the same room with kids. So that webinar is coming up on the 2nd. Okay, and with that, I will turn it over to Lindsay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So as we're finalizing the grant agreements and kind of getting clarity on all of startup and the classrooms, you're going to each be receiving an email either confirming or denying your selection to receive classrooms. And we kind of knew that that was going to be the case all along. We have 50 classrooms and we need more than 50 for our expansion. So the main deciding factors for who got classrooms and who didn't are, where are you in relation to the storage location? So, if you are a storage location, and you're keeping classrooms, then that means that we don't have to use a bunch of dollars to pay for transportation of those materials. So as soon as you get the email saying that you have been selected, I need you to respond as soon as possible with the address of the receiving location so that I can make sure that I get all of those into the document, including if you are a storage location and you would like support in moving the materials from your warehouse or the gym or whatever it's holding them out to your sites, let me know that as well, so we can get that into the document and try to make sure that we get procurement securing those vendors. Let's see, if you've not been selected, you're going to get an email as well, and then you will get startup funds, and I will try to let you guys know that as soon as possible so you can get your ordering underway. Does anybody have any questions about that? We have all kinds of questions happening not related to this. So Michael, will you move to the next slide, and then we can get into our into some of the questions in the chat box. Thank you. All right, so we had our good friend John Reeves send us an email saying that they had some surplus extra food, and they wanted to know if any of our programs were interested in having it, storing it, using it. It's probably food that would be used for emergency boxes. We have it, and it would be delivered to you for free. Michael says that everybody is going to fight over these canned beets down here. So just saying, just in case you really want those beets, get in touch with us as soon as possible. So anyway, if you're interested in having these things or using them, or you feel that they would be beneficial, we can ship them to you. Just let us know. And that's all I've got.
I'm thinking about some kind of a stew with different kinds of rice and beans and beets. Are they pickled? Yeah. No, I think you can pickle them yourselves. It's like a science experiment.
They're delicious canned beets.
Mm-hmm. You could tie-dye some shirts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
124 large cans. I like beets. I'm not a big fan of canned beets. That's my problem.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of people's problems. They're not roasted beets.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, do you guys have any questions? Not on this, but on anything? Michael, I'm not sure what our next slide is exactly, but I think we've got a little bit of time for folks to talk and ask questions. Yeah, that's what I thought. So Michael says that the links are on the ELD website, but I think we could get them. We can probably get them posted here or sent out to you guys so that you can access them.
And the Child Care Division's, the Office of Child Care's guidelines and resources, they are going to be posted and announced and so forth. They're not quite done. I can see the folder. They're still in the track changes stage, Robert. But as I mentioned in another comment, the intention is to get those out in days, not weeks. Kim Brown, I want to defer to Teresa, but that's not quite what I heard Gwen say. Teresa, can you clarify?
Yes, contracts, we're looking at contracts to be out during the month of August. So as Gwen said, so we're looking at by the end of August, hopefully much sooner. The year-end budget report is part of your budget document. So if you don't have your current budget document and need a copy of it so that you can do the year end, then I will be happy to send that back out to you. Did I cover it?
Yeah, grants and contracts this month. Hopefully earlier than end of the month. Pausing. It's the pause that refreshes. Not seeing anything else in the chat box. And with that, I think we should declare victory. Oh, 2 late breaking. Eva, your question about the cloud, is that right? I did try to answer it, Eva. I don't have an opinion yet. If you're interested in the TS Gold Cloud, let me know. Let's look at it together and maybe we can figure it out. Maureen, I'll let Lindsay respond to that one because she's got the great language on that.
I'm not sure about that, but as of right now, the date is the end of October. So starting the end of October on or before the end of October. But again, just as a reminder, we are following the camp series and all of the advice and direction given from the Office of Head Start, saying that you will not be penalized or punished or reprimanded for your hours of service, as well as your, sorry, my cat's making all kinds of a mess on my table here. So, you know, we are working on ways to track how you guys are planning to serve and meet the performance standards in a time where we may be virtual or partially virtual or so on. And we'll be in contact with you guys about that as we develop, you know, our processes a little bit more. But I think that the main thing is that we would like you to start on or before the end of October, if possible. And what that looks like, we will leave to you to let us know. There will be a handful of, you know, you'll choose your option. And if you're not within your service model is not within the, you know, the Head Start service models, either locally designed option, home base, or center base, or, then we're going to ask you to be very specific as to what your model looks like. But we're falling on the side that most everybody is going to fall within those 4 approved Head Start models. So does that answer your questions?
Lindsay, this is Brett. I have a quick follow-up question. One of the things that my team asked of me was if we do start later than we originally anticipated, will we still be responsible for meeting the requirement of 128 program service days? And it sounds like, based on what you just shared regarding following the camp series, that requirement may not be something that we would have to adhere to. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, we'll have flexibility around that. We want to know how you're working hard to do those hours, right?
Sure.
But we are not in the business as of right now to track your hours of service immediately. Where, everything looks different, and even our programs, all of you guys are going to do something different depending on where you are, right? So if your county says that you can open for a certain phase, then you've got a lot more flexibility than folks who are not in that position. So we need you guys to just track what you're doing, what your services are, and how you're meeting the Head Start performance standards and ELD requirements, while doing the very best you can to get kids into services as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, okay. So Teresa, we will, yep, there you go. Michael's sending you. So on eClick, there's the entire camp series is on. If you just go straight to eClick, there it'll say COVID at the top, and you can click it, and the camp series, all of the recordings as well as the PowerPoints are there. I have been trying to make sure that our OPK onlys have access to that, but if for some reason you're not finding it, please get in touch with me and I'll make sure that you guys have it.
On that topic, I think we're not surprising to you probably, but we're going to be asking you to describe what flexibilities you're implementing to meet the standards, what modifications of services that you're trying out to meet the intent of the standards. For dual funded programs, that's likely going to be just send us a copy of what you're sending to Region 10. And then we'll also sort of have maybe a way to prompt you to think about all the stuff that needs to be thought about if you haven't thought about it already, and a way to let us know. And then we'll likely be following up with you to say, all this makes sense except for this. Can you tell us more about that? Or that's a really cool idea. Can you share it in a webinar or whatever it is? So that'll probably be a quarterly check-in with you about what modifications you're using to meet the standards. Because it's a dynamic situation, it's hard to think about what our brains were like last April, 3 months ago. So 3 months from now, who knows what the world is going to feel like and look like. So be ready for that. We'll have some kind of quarterly way to let us know what modifications you're doing.
As well, I was thinking, we're developing some guidance that will come out, and we've been adding in a ton of resources and things that you guys might be able to utilize or access while doing virtual or partially virtual services. I think a lot of you guys have really amazing ideas, and in the last 6 months have just like very dynamically changed your entire processes and interactions with families and the way that you do things. And I would be very interested, and I'm wondering if you guys are very interested in having, a PLC of folks who are doing on-site services and folks who are doing all remote services, and, just being able to talk to one another, because I think that's, just like our teachers, right? They always want to just sit and talk about, the problem solving, the problem they're having. And I think that's really beneficial for us right now. And if you guys are interested in that, and I'm sure Michael would be interested in facilitating some of those meetings so that you could have an opportunity to just learn more about what other folks are doing.
Okay, so is that a hand raise, Charlene, or just we could read your palm maybe? That was a Go Blazers high five, I think. All right, well let's declare victory here. We're going to see you all again in a couple of weeks. By then you'll have grant agreements, you'll have guidance on health and safety documents, you'll have clarity on classrooms. Oh wow, our September 2nd selves are going to be even more wonderful than our August 19th selves, so that's terrific. Thank you all for your time and attention. Be in touch. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.